Hello everybody, how you doing today? This is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal. We're introducing you to yourself. And I want to welcome you to the H.E.A.L podcast. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, and it goes with my same book with the same title, but the subtitle is It's a Guide to Healing Your Inner Child. I can't tell you how excited I am to actually bring this podcast to you today, because I have a good friend of mine that's going to be getting on in a little bit, that we'll be able to actually share some information with you that which I believe is going to help you get to a better space and a better place in life. But before we get started, I do have to say a huge thank you to none other than our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal or choose Saucony Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And again, I want to thank BetterHelp for being a sponsor of our podcast, because I tell you, all of us, I don't care who you are, how old you are, all of us had a childhood. And that childhood may not have been perfect. We may have found ourselves going through some things or dealing with some things that could have caused us trauma, caused us problems, put us in a place that would really keep us from being our best version of ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. And I can honestly say I was led to write this book, because I know that there are a lot of adults out there that have current day behavior that was seeded in their childhood. I'm going to say that again. There are a lot of adults out there that have current day behavior that was seeded in their childhood. And like I've oftentimes said, this podcast is not meant to end the conversation, but it's meant to start it. About our inner child wounds, our inner child traumas, but more importantly, our inner child healing. And I remember hearing Dr. Phil say you can't fix what you won't face. So we first have to be willing to face it, and then we can fix it. Well, I look and see that our good friend Forrest Lamb has actually been able to get on. So I'm getting ready to pull him up so we can get this show started. Forrest, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, man, I got in some of this New Orleans Super Bowl traffic, man. So
Well,
I had to pull over the side of the road. It was just everybody going everywhere, man. It's Super Bowl mania.
Well, that's what happens when you're in the Big Easy. Everybody's taking it easy, even the traffic, huh?
Absolutely, my brother.
Yes. So, man, listen, I want you to take a minute and just tell the people about yourself and what it is that you do.
Well, I'm an engineer by trade. As a matter of fact, today I was awarded my 45th year with federal service today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm the Deputy Chief of Engineering for the New Orleans VA Medical Center. I've been with DOD, with the federal service for 46 years. I started with the Air Force. I went to the Marine Corps, and now I've been 2 years with the VA now. Also, I'm a speaking professional. I work with Toastmasters International, National Speakers Association. I've had some opportunity to do some fancy keynote addresses. I've done some workshops and those types of things. And so I've had a really exciting time.
Yes, you have. And you were one of the speakers at an event I did in New Orleans back in 2019.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Climbing on a mountain. Yes, sir.
Yep. That was actually based on my first book. For those of you who didn't know, I had a book entitled "Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain? Finding Your True Purpose." And I turned that book into a summit, and Forrest was one of my presenters and did an amazing job. And listen, I want to hop into some of these questions because I believe that you have something that you can share that's going to help all of our listeners. Okay, right. So the first question I have is, in your personal opinion, how important is inner child healing?
Well, I would use the word critical. Um,
Okay.
I heard the phrase one time. It says, "What you don't know won't hurt you." Well, that's not quite true. I found
Mm.
out some of the things that you don't know can kill you.
Okay.
And one of the things, it wasn't until more recent time that I discovered the inner child. I guess before in my life, I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. You know how we don't think we have any problems? You don't think it's us? Well, in
Right.
later years, I began to see some things start to surface. And one thing that reminds me of when I was stationed at Northern Air Force Base, I was having some difficulty with the commander I was working for. And so I become quite stressed about it. And I remember I met a clinical psychologist and we started talking. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point in time, he began to touch some nerve, began to touch some places that I didn't realize were there. And I
Mm.
remember the first thing when I walked in, I asked him, I said, well, how long is this process going to take? And he said, well, Forrest, I don't know. I sort of blew up and said, I said, you're the expert in this, and I'm paying you all this money, and you can't tell me where? you know, uh, and so we went on for about a year, and we would have our once a week sessions. And I remember this one session just like it was yesterday.
Mm.
He was a pastor, and he's working on his clinical psychologist degree. And he
Okay.
and he and he posed it to me this way. He said, "Okay, we're gonna pretend that I'm God today, and you're gonna tell me what you really want to tell me. And not gonna give me no sanctimonious prayer. You're gonna let her rip." Sequoia, I don't know
Mm.
what happened. I was possessed. I remember I cursed. I told him about how God, I don't trust you, and all these things. All these things came from some place that I
Mm.
knew not where. And all these
Right.
years, I've been, praying and all sanctimony, but something that day it just ripped. And at the end of
Mm.
it, I was kind of looking around, as if lightning bolts were coming, and the pastor now, he didn't flush at all. He says, "Okay, Mr. Lamb, thank you very much. Next week, let's schedule our next session." So we scheduled it. I distinctly remember driving home, heading towards Highland, California, and I was going through the Santa Ana River, one of those dry lake
Mm-hmm.
beds, and
Right.
there was a pastor talking on the radio, and he said, "Behold, old things have passed away, and all things have been made new." I
Mm.
didn't think much of it until I got to my house, turned on TBN, another pastor was saying the exact same thing. And that's
Wow.
when I began to realize there was something inside of me that was bottling up, and I began to cry. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, it occurred to me, all these opinions these people have been passing, the reason they hurt so much because inside I had been telling myself the same thing. So it wasn't what the person was telling me. It's actually the voice that was going on inside of my head that I was telling me. And I started to cry when I began to realize it. I remember I called him up. I went to the last session. I said, "Doctor, this is my last session. I think I now understand." And I got in contact. So it's not just important, it is critical because
Mm.
99% of the people out in the world have these hidden things that they don't know of, and until some pressure point touches upon it, and then
Right.
all of a sudden you find you're getting stuff in contact. So it's critical. It's critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they call those things triggers. You know.
Yes.
And I actually have a worksheet which I'm going to be presenting in my workshops. In fact, when we start scheduling those, but it talks about your trigger, your trauma, your reaction, and your response.
Mm,
Your trigger, your trauma, your reaction, and your response, because it's the trigger that triggers the trauma. The trauma
mm-hmm.
causes the reaction. Okay, now that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen that, we need to figure out, okay, so what do we want our response to be? Because, like I've said before, we don't have first reactors, we have first responders.
Right.
That
Right.
means that they prepare for a particular situation.
One of the things I left out was he introduced me to Myers-Briggs and the
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Myers-Briggs personality assessment. And as I
Okay.
began to explore, it shared all the inner workings of my mind and how it worked. And I began to see the wonderful things, the gifts that I had that were unseen before. And so
Okay.
now I was able for the first time to formulate a response and not a reaction.
Exactly. And that is the goal. That's where we want to get to. But it takes some time, it takes some work, but it takes some intentionality, because you can't just do it all, for lack of a better term, willy nilly. You have to be
Absolutely.
intentional, and you
Absolutely.
have to put in the work. Put in the work.
Absolutely.
So In your personal opinion, when should someone start inner child work?
You're going to find that the person doesn't start it. The inner child starts working you first.
Ooh, say that again. Say that again.
You're not going to know when. Your inner
Mm,
child will tell you when.
mm,
And that day when I ran into that colonel on the issues that I ran into and on the feelings that were going on inside of me, and when that guy asked me that question, I want you to tell me what you really feel. The inner
mm.
child spoke up. The adult
Wow.
was asleep, but the child spoke. And he threw a
Mm.
tantrum right there in the middle of that guy's office. And I was so shocked because I'd never seen this person before. I said, who is this?
Wow. Okay.
So it's not a matter of
So,
you starting. The inner child will tell you when it's time.
okay. So, in other words, when your trauma speaks, when your trauma takes the microphone and starts speaking, okay, all
Yeah.
right, well, and you are dead on point because a lot of people wait until something like that happens. But so that's one of the reasons why, again, I wanted to start this podcast because, well, before you get to that point, why not just start looking and start asking and start evaluating and even critiquing yourself to see why it is you do what you do. I
Yes.
was telling somebody the other day, I said my personal development journey started from a bad relationship. And when
Yes.
after the relationship was over, instead of me blaming and pointing at them, I started asking myself questions like why am I the way that I am? Why do I respond? Why do I react the way that I do? And that was a non-threatening moment as opposed to me just blowing up on somebody and going all off the deep end and that little child speaking up. So, but in fact, but you're all right. But we have to be consciously aware of who's driving. And I've said this before, never let your emotions drive if they're not covered on your insurance. And oftentimes we get the keys to our little child, we get the keys to our emotions, and they run all over the sidewalk and tear down mailboxes and stuff. And then we have to wind up dealing with the fallout.
It's interesting that you mentioned the word conscious because
Mm,
in the discussion, I've become certified in the Myers-Briggs over the years. It talks
okay.
about Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, and he starts the conversation by talking about our different levels of consciousness. He
Okay.
talks about
Okay.
the conscious mind, that's the active mind, the you mind, the me right here mind, I see you mind. Then
Right.
he goes to the subconscious or the preconscious. He said that's the part that memorizes all the things, it stores all the things that have happened in the past. Carl Jung takes it one step further and says you also store the things that about your future. In other words, your imagination is stored there. That's where your dreams are born. Then he mentioned
Okay.
this last part called the unconscious mind. It's the mind that it's kind of like it tells the shape of how you're going to behave. It says that particular mind is not directly accessed, but is constantly always being revealed. You can't
Mm,
actually talk to it, but you will see it. And the one thing that the Myers-Briggs, as I was going through the study, it showed me how to see what revealed. It reminds me of a civil engineering term called reflective cracking. You see them
okay.
put the pavement down, the pavement nice and smooth, and they plant the oak trees. But over the years, as the oak trees grow, the roots underneath the ground start to swell the ground up. So you don't ever see the roots, but you start to see the cracks that the roots produce. And so basically
Right.
your personality and all those things that you see are not directly seen, but when they look at you, they begin to see the cracks. And it is the cracks that starts to tell you what's going on. So the first revelation of what's going underneath the ground is the cracks on the surface.
Mm,
And that comes from a level of consciousness that is not directly seen, but it is
right.
always being revealed.
Okay. Okay. So my next question is, how does trauma show up in life and in relationships?
Oh, it shows up in so many ways. It shows up in distrust. It shows up in anger. It shows up in non-forgiving. It shows up in lack of focus. It shows up in fears. It manifests itself in so many different ways.
Right.
So it's
Right.
no one way. You may not even notice it at first. It may be just a short temper something. It may you blow up for something. You may become less focused on something, and then after a while, you start to notice the pattern keeps prevailing over a period of time. You start to see the track, the trail starts to form, and then you realize there must be something here.
Right. Right. I like what you said about the word pattern because I'm a huge proponent of just looking at the patterns of our life, because those patterns, they tell. And even like you said about those actual cracks, those cracks are coming from something. And so if you can't identify the pattern, you can't identify the root, which means that you can't get
Ah,
the problem
good point.
solved.
Good point.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so
Absolutely.
what do you believe is the biggest obstacle to inner child healing?
Denial. I don't have a problem. It's not me. It got to be you.
What you
Did I
say?
say something wrong? Did I step on something? I'm sorry.
No, 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 no.
Was that too
No,
wild? Too
you
soon?
good? No, 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 no. In fact, you're good. You said okay. All right. So,
Now, I
denial,
want you to
huh?
know that. I want you to know that's very revealing because years from now, years before now, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that.
Mm.
I wouldn't have
Okay.
admitted that. And
Okay.
so, one of the first things is like when you think about the guys that work with Alcoholics Anonymous,
Uh huh.
the first thing is to accept the fact that I got a problem.
Gotcha.
If you don't get to that point, there is no inner healing.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. In fact, you hit the nail on the head. And even like our good friend, in fact, Wanda Graham said a couple of weeks ago, he said, uh, when I asked that question, he was saying a lot of people live in Egypt. I said, live in Egypt. He said, yeah, they live in denial.
Yeah.
I said, okay, all right,
Yeah.
all
Okay.
right.
Tell Linda I'm gonna take that one. That's mine now. I'm gonna steal that. Tell that one. No.
I'm gonna let Mr. PowerPoint know.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so do you believe that someone could do inner child therapy or inner child work alone?
You know, when you're on an airplane, it says the oxygen mask will, in case of rapid decompression in the compartment, mask will drop down the ceiling. It says first put on your own mask and then
Right,
assist someone else.
right,
The
right.
answer is no, because
Okay.
it is the fact that we were alone that got us into this, and being
Mm,
alone is not going to get it out. So I think it's Einstein said something about the same thing. We try to use the same thing it took to get us into it. We're trying to use the same thing to get us back out.
right,
That's
right,
that's not going to work.
right, right.
That's not going to work.
And my take on that is that there's a certain amount of work you can do by yourself, but it comes a point to where you do have to get help. Because I mean, for instance, if you haven't moved from Egypt, if you haven't gotten out of denial,
Yes.
you can't start the process. But if you've identified and recognized, hey, I have an issue, I have something, so that part you can do by yourself. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
if it's too heavy, if the trauma is too great, that means that you need to get some help and get some assistance with that.
Another
So
thing
my
that comes to mind, Ciccone, is
uh-huh.
when you go to do land navigation,
Okay.
you pick a target off in the distance, and you take a compass heading or an azimuth, and you start to walk towards it. And as the needle deviates, you know which side of the path that you're deviating to, left or right, and you correct. It reminds me of a pilot driving flying in the clouds without instruments. You need the external bearing, a fixed
Right.
target, if you will. It's kind of like there was a story about there was a big battleship that was coming in a storm. He was coming in towards a harbor, and he saw this light ahead, and so he flashed at the light. This is the battleship Missouri, whatever it is. Basically move to your left, and then at the other light, it flashed back. Well, you need to move to the right. He said, "This is the United States battleship with all this power. You need to move to the left." And then the tower flashed back. You need to move to the right. And it's kept escalating. So finally the light that he was looking at says, I'm a lighthouse and I can't move. So your call. You know? And so it's that thing you need that external to get a bang,
Right.
and you need something that's fixed, like a
Right.
lighthouse that's not gonna move to be able to
Right.
get that thing. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in fact, we definitely need to make sure that we are pliable in our approach to our own healing and being open to that level of correction. Because even like you said in that story, they were talking about who they were and all this other type of stuff. But with the lighthouse, like, yeah, I can't move.
I
You
can't
are going to
move.
run aground if
Run
you
across.
don't.
So it's your
Yeah,
call.
exactly,
You know.
exactly. It's your call.
Another thing is that here's another word that came to mind while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that I had trouble with until that day I called that pastor. On that day, I asked for help.
Mm.
Out of all
Okay.
the other days in my life, on that day was the first day in my life that I reached out and made that phone call and I asked for help.
Okay.
Help me.
Mm. You know, there's so many people that struggle with that. They struggle with asking for. And I'll be honest, and in fact, it's just a moment of transparency. I'm the type of person, I'm going to try to do everything I can by myself. But after I've exhausted my knowledge, my intellect, all of my resources, after I've gotten to the very end, then I become the best student. Because it's
Yes.
like, I've tried everything that I know. Now, in fact, when I ask
Yes.
for help, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to correct you. I'm not trying to, talk over you. I'm trying to get the help that I need because, again, I have exhausted everything I know and I am putting myself in a position to receive. You laugh for some reason. What you think? What you
Well,
laughing at?
I'm thinking about it too. When you're trying to rescue a drowning person, they say don't grab the person because the person will grab onto you and take you down.
Yep,
So you let them go down for that third time and let that water take the fight out of them.
exactly,
By
exactly.
the time they get on that third time, get ready to go down that fourth time, they tired.
Yep.
They will take your help.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah. They would definitely do that.
I'm just thinking about this. Let that water take the fight out, and life took the fight out of me.
Mm. Okay. Wow. Wow. Life took the fight out of you. Well, hopefully, by people listening to this podcast, they won't actually have to get to that point. They will hopefully, be able to again take a minute, step back, evaluate their life, evaluate their situations, their relationships, stuff that they're dealing with, their actions, their habits, and they will be able to see that hey, there's something more here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's something that I need to look into, or I need to at least start the process of trying to understand myself. And like I tell people
Yeah.
all the time, we'll ask questions of everybody else, but rarely do we ask questions of ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so how can you help somebody who is struggling to identify the need for inner child work?
Shut up.
Shut up. Ooh, okay,
Yeah.
shut up.
Spe- women will probably contest you that men we are fixers.
Yeah.
We try to fix everything. I
Yep.
remember there was someone very close to me who suffered from depression for years. And I remember once we were sitting together with a psychologist, and he said, now, Mr. Lamb, now either you're going to be her clinician or her husband, but you can't be both.
Mm,
And I began to realize that I wasn't qualified to be a clinician. So then I need to learn
okay.
to shut up and
Okay.
listen.
Okay.
So the biggest thing we can do is not to try to start giving people advice. Just like that counselor, he let me talk. He said, I want you to tell me what you feel. And then he sat back and just listened.
Mm,
And I unloaded. So oftentimes the people, they sort of know what they need. They just need to be helped be guided. So the biggest thing that you can do for people to help them is start out by shutting up.
okay. Okay. So let's say after you've shut up, after they poured everything out, after they shared their point of view, then what?
I'm glad you asked. Back to the thing about putting on the mask first. You can basically become the best you that you can be and provide them a lighthouse, provide them a place to
Mm,
sight on and set their bearings. And so you need to be able to stand and let your light shine and let them find you.
gotcha. Gotcha. Now that was worth the journey. It was worth the trip.
I'm about to buy my own tape.
Yeah, yes you are. Yes you are. All right. So with that being said, I do have to run this commercial one more time for my sponsor, but afterwards, I want you to tell us how we can get in contact with you, how we can find out what it is you're doing and all that. So again, I want to thank our sponsor, none other than BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Well, again, we want to thank BetterHelp for being the sponsor of our podcast, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have these conversations for people to know that it's okay to get the help you need. It's okay to talk to somebody, and it's probably better if you talk to somebody who don't know all the players, don't know all the names, somebody who is unbiased and somebody who can really help you to see, because like Les Brown would oftentimes say, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And sometimes we're trying to look at our own picture, but we're in the frame and we're missing something. So having somebody that's totally detached that can actually help us to see what it is we're missing, what it is we need to work on. I'll never forget, several years ago, I took a picture for a magazine, Alabama Technology Today. And I was standing there and I was looking fly, looking sharp. Guy took the picture and everything. When I got the magazine back, my tie was crooked. I mean, it was crooked. And I'm like, you could have just looked from the camera, like, hold on for a second. In fact, let's straighten your tie. But see, so that's what I'm saying. We can think that we are looking fly, but our tie is crooked. So we need to get somebody in our life that can help us to see stuff we can't see. So Forrest, before we get out of here, how can people get in contact with you? How can they follow you? How can they glean more information from you, Mr. Myers-Briggs champion?
Well, I'm known online as Forrest Lamb Speaks. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can message me and engage me in conversation. I greatly appreciate it. Look forward to having your company.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lamb. And before we get out of here, I do have to remind people, I know, Forrest is a speaker, but I'm a speaker too. We spend our lives pouring into other people. And so I'm starting to close out my show with my scissor reel. So we'll talk to y'all next week. Well, my name is Saconi Prince of SaconiPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Saconi Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching us. What can they reference when they step into our shoes? I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves. They step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that. Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mind.
I've learned so much, and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there. You have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.